International Affairs Editor Philipp Turle joins me now on set. Good to see you, Philip. I guess the big question people are asking themselves today, one of the big questions, is where do things stand here? Who has the upper hand in this conflict 3 months after it was launched?
Well, what is certain here, Catherine, is that Russia has lost the war so far, but it hasn't lost the battle it's fighting. Ukraine has done much better than President Putin expected. Cast your mind back to the 24th of February when this special military operation, as the Russians call it, began. The plan by Vladimir Putin was to come in, overthrow the regime of Volodymyr Zelensky in a couple of days, take control of Ukraine, and that would be the end of the conflict. It certainly hasn't gone the way that he expected, but it hasn't been a complete disaster for the Russians because the Russians have managed to control the area in the southeast of the country, now linking Crimea to Donbass. We've seen the fall of Mariupol. They are pushing forward in that region. So I think that the error that Vladimir Putin made back at the beginning of the war was to open up all these different fronts, 4 of them in the country. He couldn't sustain those fronts. There wasn't the military backup. He underestimated the retaliatory moves by the Ukrainian authorities, the international backing for Ukraine. I think that was also a miscalculation by the Russians. But here we are. After all these months of fighting, and we don't seem to be any closer to finding a solution to this war or an easy way out of the situation facing the Russians and facing the Ukrainians.
Yes, and the battle for the Donbass is very different than the fighting, as you mentioned, that we saw around Kiev or in other areas of the north of the country.
Yeah, the terrain is completely different. And what we've seen here is that there have been Russian gains. As I was saying, Mariupol's gone. The Sea of Azov now is a Russian sea, which was under the control of the Ukrainians. And what the Russians want to do is to take control of the whole of the Black Sea coastline, to cut off the coastline for the Ukrainians, so it's going to make the country completely dependent on the Russians and on its neighbours, because it will be a landlocked country, and that is one of the tactics the Russians are hoping to continue with doing, and what they are pushing forward to try to do.
Looking forward now, if there's any way of seeing any end in sight, what could be the possible outcomes, do you think?
Well, there are several possible scenarios. The first one is that Ukraine pushes back the Russian offensive and wins the war. Is that going to happen? And what does a victory mean? Does that mean going back to the pre-February 24th situation with Crimea, Luhansk and Donetsk under Russian control? Or does it mean that the Ukrainians won't stop until they recuperate all the territories that they lost since 2014? Remember, this war has not just been going on since the 24th of February. It's been going on for 8 years now. So it's putting Volodymyr Zelensky, the president, in a very difficult position. The second scenario is that Russia wins the war. It continues its military strangulation of the country, its economic strangulation of the country, and manages to push back. It's got the support of the breakaway states of Luhansk and Donetsk in the east of the country. It's a much easier terrain, as you were saying, so they may be able to push back and make further gains, certainly in the southeast of Ukraine. There's also the possibility the war drags on for years, and some people are saying it could drag on for 5, 10, 15, even 20 years. There would never be a solution. But that looks pretty unlikely because Russia is spending $300 million a day on this war. It's going to suffer from international sanctions. Therefore, I think it's going to be the pressure is going to mount on Russia to come up with some kind of negotiated settlement. And that's the other one. Will there be a negotiated settlement? And if there is, what kind of negotiated settlement will that be? It looks pretty likely, if there is one, that it's going to end up with Ukraine losing some of its territory.
Which, of course, is very politically difficult for President Zelensky. Thank you very much indeed there, Philipp Turle, our International Affairs Editor.